Welcome to part 5 of the new imperialism. Now we're going to take a look at the Spanish-American War. Now, while the Army was getting itself ramped up, the Navy actually took some of the first action. Now, as I mentioned before, the United States Navy is not, a very powerful Navy at this time. But fortunately for them, at this point, the Spanish Navy is not the Spanish Armada of old either. They are in absolutely pathetic shape, and that's going to play to their favor, right? The U.S. Navy is going to send Admiral George Dewey, who was actually with some U.S. ships in Hong Kong at the time. They're going to send him a telegram and order him to go to the Philippines and take control of the waters in and around the Philippines. So on May 1st, 1898, right before dawn, Admiral Dewey arrived at Manila Bay in the Philippines. The fleet that he's facing is a Spanish fleet led by Rear Admiral Patricio Montoyo, right? And this fleet is a pathetic sight, right? Dewey has, a small flotilla here and stuff, but these ships, there's 3 of Montoyo's ships had been immobilized for so long that they had actually removed the guns from the ship and turned them into shore batteries, right? One of his cruisers, a cruiser named the Castilla, had a major leak in the propeller bearing that they had decided to plug up by filling the propeller bearing with cement, effectively cementing the propeller into place. So the ship was immobile. When it actually engaged with the American fleet, it actually had other ships tow it into position, right? 5 other primary ships were just really small cruisers and completely obsolete. I mean, this is a really horrible looking little Navy. At 5:15 a.m., the American fleet spotted the Spanish fleet at anchorage at Cavite, and they opened fire. And by noon, the battle was over. And the Spanish had suffered some severe losses. Every single ship had been either destroyed or captured, right? Admiral Montoyo reported that he had 381 men killed, right? And it's a great victory for Admiral George Dewey. So much so, in fact, he reported 0 casualties. He said, we didn't lose a single guy. Now, I got a little bit of issue with this, and I'll explain why. First of all, he was the fleet commander, so he's not actually supposed to be commanding individual ships, yet he had to take personal command of the ship he was on, the Olympia, because Captain Charles Gridley, who was the captain of the ship, had a nervous breakdown during the battle and collapsed. Casualty means can't fight. Doesn't mean dead. It means killed, wounded, missing, sick, lost, nervous breakdown. That's a casualty. Matter of fact, his nervous breakdown was so severe, he died a month later. That to me counts. That's not the only one I have for you either. On the Hugh McCulloch, their chief engineer was a guy by the name of Francis Frank Randall. He was really excited to get in this fight with the Spanish. So much so, in fact, that as the ship rounded into Manila Bay, he suddenly grabbed his chest in agony and fell over dead. He'd had a major heart attack at the very beginning of the battle. He's dead. That counts, right? That's a casualty, okay? At any rate, all right, the Navy says no casualties, and Dewey said no casualties. Fine, we'll let them have it. But Dewey had captured the bay, he'd captured the garrison, and he'd captured the harbor there at Cavite. And then he sent a message back to Washington basically saying, hey guys, that's all we do. We're the Navy, right? You want to take the Philippines? You need to send the Army. So McKinley is going to immediately put out an order to the Army to gather together about 5,000 men to take to the Philippines and take over the islands, right? So the Navy is going to be able to capture the Spanish harbors there in the Philippines, and they're also going to be able to take the Spanish island of Guam, but under stranger circumstances than even this. To me, I think Guam is the strangest story of the Spanish-American War. I mean, the USS Charleston, this cruiser that you see here, was captained by a man named Captain Henry Glass, okay? He was sailing towards Manila with 3 transport ships that had U.S. Army troops on it. Remember, Dewey needed the Army to take the islands of the Philippines, and after his May taking of the harbor, he said, you got to send troops. And that's what Captain Glass is doing. He's escorting troops on the way to the Philippines, okay? On June 20th, 1898, he is ordered to make a stopover on his way to Manila at Guam and capture the island from the Spanish. Okay. So, on June 20th, 1898, he sails within the range of the fortifications, Fort Santa Cruz there in Guam, and he doesn't see anything going on. Here you are, you're at war with Spain. You're right off the coast of a Spanish fort, inside the gun range of the fort. You'd think the fort would start firing at him. But as far as he can tell, there's nobody in the fort at all. So he sees there's a Japanese transport ship called the Manitogawa, and so they hail that ship and send a messenger over and basically ask, have you seen any activity in this fort? And the Manitogawa replied, said, we've been here for a couple days, and as far as we know, there's nobody in that fort. So Captain Glass decides, let's get these guys' attention. Let's wake them up. And so he orders his men to fire a warning shot over the top of the fort. So Captain Glass fires a salvo of 3-pounder guns over the fort. Okay. Now all of a sudden there's some activity at the fort. 2 men appear and begin walking down the stairs on the exterior of the fort that goes down to the water line. They're walking down this scaffolding. They get into a little outrigger boat and begin motoring their way out towards the Charleston. One man's in a brown suit. The other one's in a white uniform. And of course, Captain Glass is like, that's pretty strange. The boat hails the Charleston. The 2 men ask for permission to come aboard. Captain Glass grants it. Okay. And the 2 men are Lieutenant Garcia Gutierrez, who is the head of the Spanish Navy there in Guam, and Dr. Romero, a civilian who's actually in charge of the Army forces on Guam. Okay, they greet the Americans and they say, we want to tell you how much we appreciate that saluting shot you gave us and honored us with, and we would like to return the favor and fire our cannons in salute of you as well, but we don't have any gunpowder. Would you be so kind as to loan us some gunpowder so that we can do a saluting shot too? To which Captain Glass looks at them and says, gentlemen, you realize that Spain is at war with the United States right now? And the 2 men look at each other nervously. No, we didn't know that. Spain had never informed their garrison at Guam that they were at war with the United States. And now these guys have just told a U.S. naval ship that they have no gunpowder. So on June 21st, 1898, Guam surrenders to the United States. They take possession of 54 Spanish soldiers, an island that has been captured because of a supposed saluting shot. Now, back in the Caribbean, the Spanish forces were bottled up in Santiago Bay in Cuba, right? On June 10th, 1898, U.S. Marines landed at Guantanamo Bay, right? 12 days later, on the 22nd, you're going to have 16,000 men of the 5th Corps, the United States Army, land in Cuba at a place called Daiquiri. Okay? On July 1st, Theodore Roosevelt and his Rough Riders engaged in their famous Battle of San Juan Hill, kind of. Okay? The unit was actually there in support of the 10th Cavalry. And their job was actually to take the neighboring hill of Kettle Hill. That's where Theodore Roosevelt had his famous charge up the hill. The neighboring and adjoining hill, Kettle Hill, protecting the flank of the 10th Cavalry, right? The 10th Cavalry, which were all Buffalo soldiers, right? The 10th Cavalry was led by a first lieutenant by the name of John J. Blackjack Pershing, right, who would go on to command the American Expeditionary Force in World War I. Okay, so these Buffalo soldiers would take the hill with the support of Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. Okay, well, a lot of times the fact that these Buffalo soldiers and Blackjack Pershing's efforts in this are forgotten. Why? Well, if you take a look at this picture here that I have on the slide, you'll notice on the right-hand side you can see members of the 10th Cavalry Division. But usually this picture is cut off so that Roosevelt's dead in the center and all you see is the Rough Riders, right? And Roosevelt, of course, is going to use this for propaganda. He's so impressed with his job that he did here on San Juan Hill, he's going to put himself in for the Congressional Medal of Honor. Now, they won't give it to him here first. He'll actually get the Congressional Medal of Honor after his death, right? He'll get it posthumously, right? But you know, he was pretty, he already had political aspirations, and he was already thinking and eyeing political offices after this war was over. On July 3rd, Admiral Cervera tried to escape Santiago Bay with his fleet. It was very quickly destroyed by the United States Navy. Santiago will fall to the U.S. on July 17, 1898, and on July 26, Spain will begin asking for terms for peace. That same day, Puerto Rico will have American forces land on it, and they'll begin conquering that island as well. So finally, on February 12, 1898, only 111 days into the war, it's a very short war, Spain signs a ceasefire with the United States, and the war is effectively over. The day after that, on the 13th, Manila in the Philippines will be captured by American forces. All right, so the ceasefire is signed on August 12, 1898, but now you got to hammer out the details and create a permanent peace treaty, right? That'll be officially signed on December 10th, 1898, in what becomes known as the Treaty of Paris of 1898. And for those of you who've taken classes of mine before, yes, I'm sorry, another Treaty of Paris. There's 33 of them. I can't do nothing about that, right? And in this class, we're going to talk about 2 of them. Well, technically 3, but the Treaties of Paris that ends World War I, we'll just talk about the Treaty of Versailles so we don't have another Treaty of Paris to deal with, okay? In the Treaty of Paris of 1898, the war between Spain and the United States officially comes to an end, but on top of that, we also have the Spanish officially recognizing the independence of Cuba and recognizing the American occupation of the area. The United States will write the Cuban Constitution as a result of this, and Spain will also cede to the United States Spain and Puerto Rico, also the Philippines, under the condition that Spain is given $20 million in exchange for ratifying the treaty, okay? So with the war with Spain is now officially over. The United States effectively controls Cuba, which is now an independent nation, owns Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines. Now, all of that seems like everything's good and has come to a happy ending, except in the Philippines, there's a group of people there that were saying, wait a minute, I thought we were fighting for independence too. And it's going to lead to effectively a continuation of the hostilities that's known as the Philippine American War.